Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Stefan Livera Podcast, the podcast brought to you by Bold, the Bitcoin banking platform where US listeners can buy Bitcoin for the industry's lowest fees and earn the highest Bitcoin-backed rewards with the Bold debit card. Now, joining me on the show today is Hunter Beast. Hunter is working over at Anduro, which is a research-focused sidechain incubated by Mara, and many of you will know Hunter for his work in terms of BIP 360 and quantum-resistant forms of Bitcoin. So first off, welcome to the show, Hunter.
Hi, great to see you. It was fun bumping into you at Vegas. We actually have met in person. So
yes, I remember that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although at Vegas things are very things are very quick, and sometimes you don't get a lot of time to actually
Neither
catch
of
up
us
with
had
people.
much time there. Yeah, it was a very busy, very cool conference though.
Excellent. So let's talk a bit about what you're working on so people can learn a bit about that. Now, as you will know and listeners may know, I just did a recent episode with Clara from Chaincode Labs and Anthony, who were also talking about their quantum report, which they put out, relatively recently. So some of this material will obviously be related, or some of it's, let's say, revision, but it's probably good for people to hear different perspectives anyway. So maybe you want to set the background for us. What was your interest in this? Like, how did you get interested in this whole topic?
Well, it always struck me as a bit of one of the more potent sources of FUD out there. Like, I'm not the kind of Bitcoiner that likes to just dismiss FUD outright. I like to address it. I like to have a good answer for things. And I did not have a good answer for what to do about the potential threat of quantum computers. And so I even looked into it. I was looking around for BIPs. I was looking around for discussions, and it had been discussed as early as 2013 in Bitcoin Talk. And then there were also some discussions in 2019 and 2020 around the Taproot upgrade. But then after that, it just kind of stopped. We stopped having those discussions, at least back when I was looking into it in 2024, about middle of the year, and so summer. And what I was hoping for was that we have a plan for it, right? We have a decent plan, a decent solution, hopefully maybe even some software, a soft fork, that sort of thing for us, waiting in the wings for us to at least be prepared, right? And so that's kind of the motto behind BIP 360 is be prepared, not scared.
And now, obvious question that most people will have is they may be coming from a place of skepticism about this technology in general. And even just a few years ago, that may have been, let's say, the common view amongst most Bitcoiners that, it's just not really a real thing, that these quantum computers won't advance to that level, or maybe they won't get the right level of error correction. Now, I don't understand this. This is what, you would have heard if you spoke to different people.
Yeah, for sure.
What has changed recently? Is it that some of these recent hardware innovations have kind of taken it to a level where now there is a feasible pathway to this kind of thing?
Well, yeah. I think one of the major problems has been advances in error correction. There are three sort of like fronts in the quantum computing realm. There's the hardware itself, with like however many qubits they're able to establish, and all the gates and all this on the chip. Then there's advancements in quantum error correction. And then finally, there's advancements in the algorithms, like Shor's algorithm implementations that would potentially affect or be used for quantum key recovery, essentially. And so so that's like I would say like there have been billions spent on research for this. And especially in recent years, there's been over $40 billion spent on research total. And we're seeing just announcements of like billions of dollars investment in various things. And it's just although the technology isn't there yet, as far as we know, although it could be there in sort of like a like who knows what the spooks have. I'm not a spook, so I don't know what the spooks have. But I'm just one of those. I'm just looking at. I'm just like highly paranoid of anything the government does, and uh, which is kind of ironic because we're using NIST cryptography, which we can get into in a bit. But no, I mean, like I keep an eye on what they're doing, and they're telegraphing just about every signal they can without outright expressing the fact that elliptic cryptography is broken. That we need to get ahead of this. We need to prepare for this particular, like we need to essentially upgrade from elliptic cryptography and RSA to post quantum cryptography.
I see. And so the point about Shor's algorithm is that part already exists. And I guess what I have heard, some skepticism or some forms of skepticism have been expressed about quantum computers, about whether they can do anything useful. But in the case of, at least with Bitcoin, there's already Shor's algorithm that already exists that would theoretically, if the right, let's say, hardware with the right number of gates and error correction were to exist, that it could back out your private key from your public key in short terms.
Right. Any exposed public key would essentially make the coins in it or backed by it or behind it, right, in that address, essentially. It would make them quantum vulnerable.
And so I guess, do you have maybe you don't, but do you have an idea, like, in terms of time frame, when do you think this is a realistic risk? Like, is it now? Is it 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Do you have an idea or not really?
It really is a difficult question to answer because it spans the gamut of, like, we may already have that capability, it's just not widespread, to it may never happen. And then there's also, of course, like, the startup roadmaps that are highly optimistic. There's the more corporate roadmaps that are more like, more like 5 to 10 years out. Then there's like what the national security guidelines are, and those go out to 2033 to 2035, so it's somewhere. I would say certainly within the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see some fireworks. That's just like my sense from all the things I've read. It may also happen sooner, though I hope it doesn't, because we need lots of time. Bitcoin is notoriously difficult to upgrade. This will require a soft fork. And also, not only will it require a soft fork, but there'll need to be a transition period as people migrate their funds from quantum vulnerable addresses to post quantum cryptography addresses like P2Q or H.
Gotcha. And so just again, for people who maybe if you didn't catch the earlier episode with Clara and Anthony, I'll just kind of offer my, layman's explanation, just for people who are trying to understand this stuff without necessarily being, really deep in the detail. When we secure our Bitcoin, we have private keys that you can represent using like those 12 or 24 words. And that, in most contexts, like if you've got like a hardware wallet that, you've got, the 12 or 24 words that represents that master private key. Out of that, you might have a master public key. And then the way you can, our software, your phone wallet or your hardware wallet and things like this, in the background, really what's happening is it's generating these public private key pairs. And the way Bitcoin works today is that when I want to send a transaction to Hunter, really what I'm doing is I'm signing a message. And in order for me to sign that message, I'm not revealing my private key, but I'm doing this operation in a way that I can sign the message that sends coins to Hunter without revealing my private key. But the risk here that we're talking about is in the, let's say, 5 or 10 year horizon, it's possible that a quantum computer can, let's say, see your public key and reverse out the private key, meaning that quantum attacker, if he can see your public key, if he can see those public keys, he can steal your coins, basically.
Yeah, and there's one point I want to make sure is clear is that in order for this to be clear, we need to get a little bit more technical. So there's your BIP39 mnemonic seed, right, which is the 12 to 24 words. That encodes for entropy, like randomness, right? That it has to be very random. It has to be very good randomness, like a lot of randomness, right? Perfectly random, like noise. Hopefully, we get it from like, say, an avalanche noise generator chip, or maybe a Geiger counter, or something just really random, right? That's a good maybe coin flips. I don't know, but yeah. Anyway, the other so once you go from the seed entropy, that goes through what's called a BIP32 hierarchical,
like HT, hierarchical deterministic.
Yes,
wallets.
hierarchical deterministic key derivation. And when I won't go into like the particulars of that, of like key derivation and derivation paths, but what I will say is that the seed goes through a hash that then turns it into what's called an XPriv, or an extended private key. And so and then once you go from the extended private key, that then is used to derive addresses, both receive addresses and change addresses, and this and it'll generate multiple addresses in your wallet for based on these criteria. And in order to do that, it generates new private keys for each address, and then it derives public keys for each address, and then it encodes those public keys, or hashes those public keys, and then encodes them into an address that supports, say, bEX32 encoding. And so essentially, the thing I want to make sure is clear is that although when you spend your coins, you have to reveal your public key for that address, it's just for that one address. It's just for the coins in that one address. So even if like a quantum computer were to derive like a private key to a public key that you've revealed, it does not reveal the seed. It doesn't reveal your 12 to 24 words. That is safe because it is kept behind a number of hash algorithms, and it requires a much more powerful quantum computer to break a hash algorithm. It is like it's something that we're not even thinking about, and so we just think it's quantum hard. And also that said, if you've revealed your XPub, your extended public key, you've basically given the keys to castle. You to anybody who can then derive all your addresses and then all the public keys, and then get into all your private keys if they have a sufficiently powerful computer. So does that all make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm following, but I think the spelling out one implication of that, it means that there will be users who have used wallets like Electrum as an example, and maybe not just Electrum, but Electrum-based wallets, things like, let's say, Sparrow Wallet and Blue Wallet and, I don't know, Nunchuck and various others that might have Electrum functionality. They are now potentially being exposed too, because if they have sent... now, I'm not sure exactly... Maybe this is like a more technical question on whether they send the full XBub or it queries addresses.
It usually just queries the addresses, right? The address index.
Gotcha.
Like an Electrum index will index addresses. And that said, sometimes you have to provide your XPub to like CoinJoin coordinators,
or
and that
even
sort of thing.
Certain services might ask for an XPub to send you, like, we're going to send you coins, as withdrawal. Now, in the quantum future, that could also be another way that you get pwned, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, because like generally XPubs will be used for preventing address reuse, and address reuse is really bad for quantum, from a quantum computing perspective. But then also revealing your XPub is also really bad, and so it's a complicated question of how we keep things secure under this threat model, and we're still like examining it under new lenses every day. So it's definitely like it's a challenge to keep to not only think of how we fix Bitcoin, like with BIP360, but also how we keep existing coins safe. One thing to also be aware of is that over 2/3 of Bitcoin out there, like of the coins out there, are in quantum safe addresses or quantum resistant addresses. They're public key hashed. They're not reused. We don't know the public key for them. It's just but that said, 6.2 million coins are vulnerable, and of those 6.2 million, 1.7 million are kind of the original public key format used by Satoshi, called pay-to-public key, or P2PK.
This episode is brought to you by CoinKite, the makers of my favorite Bitcoin hardware wallet, the Cold Card Q. Now, some people think self-custody is too hard, but it's really about taking responsibility for your Bitcoin wealth and understanding that self-custody gives you a true feeling of liberty. The Cold Card Q has a full keyboard and big screen. It's got 2 secure elements and a true air gap, allowing you to go fully air-gapped using QR codes from seed generation to transaction signing. You can power the device using 3 AAA batteries, so you don't even have to plug it into the wall for power. You can easily use it with Sparrow Wallet for PC or Nunchuck on mobile, and you can dial it into the right level of security and complexity that you choose. If you want a simple setup, just use 12 words and single signature. If you want passphrases, easy. If you want to add multi-sig or co-signing features, you've got those too. So go to coinkite.com, use code Livera to get 10% off on your Cold Card or other devices, and level up your self-custody today. This episode is brought to you by Galoy, builders of banking software for the Bitcoin age. After years of risk and uncertainty, Bitcoin and banking are colliding. The regulatory environment is rapidly shifting in favor of Bitcoin and digital assets. Fintechs and crypto-native companies can become chartered banks, and traditional banks and credit unions will launch Bitcoin products. But the legacy core banking software that many financial institutions run on wasn't built for Bitcoin. The Galoy banking infrastructure stack delivers all the key elements of a modern core banking platform, with cloud-native infrastructure, event-based architecture, and robust APIs coming together to meet the security, scalability, and reliability needs of banks of the future. Whether you are launching a modern financial institution from the ground up, or you are adding Bitcoin-backed lending or payments to your product offering, talk to the team at Galoy. Visit galoy.io or reach out to the team at biz@galoy.io. Gotcha. And then, right, and this aligns with the numbers Clara and Anthony were mentioning in their in the episode with me and in their report, where I think it's something like 4.5 million coins are vulnerable because of address reuse. And I guess there are there's also kind of maybe there's operational reasons why, or maybe psychological reasons why people do address reuse, but of course that's bad for quantum and bad for privacy too.
In some ways, it's in some cases it's a business requirement, because some exchanges will need to abide by something called proof of reserves. And the problem with proof of reserves is that if done in a how would I say, naive way, it will expose the public key as soon as it's been spent from, like the cold wallet for that exchange has been spent from. The like a better way would be to maybe encode multiple script paths in a taproot address, and then only reveal the public key for each of those script paths each time. That still requires a soft fork, though, for us to keep that secure, because not only do you need to disable the key path spends, but you also need to make sure that you can't spend from this address type if it has like a if for any keys that have been spent from, so you wouldn't be able to reuse this address, but you could still send coins to it and spend from it, the same address because it's a Taproot style commitment. Or even better would be what we call qubit or P2QRH, which is still very Taprooty, but it removes actually the key pass spend, and we can get into that in a bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, like proof of reserves, there might be solutions for that. They're complicated, but I think still worthwhile, and that's something that I've been noodling on in the background. But that said, it's a little further off a question than how do we keep, say, Taproot secure.
I see. Okay. So let's get into kind of your overall idea then of quantum resistant hash. This is obviously the BIP 360 idea. Links will be in the show notes, and it's bip360.org to see the overall website. Can you give us an overview there? What are some of the solution ideas? And I believe you mentioned 3 signature types. Maybe just walk us through a little bit. What is the proposal here?
Yeah, we actually had to remove one of the signature types just to address a bit of feedback that 3 is too many, and it also made sense to remove one just because it used the same or similar, not the same, but similar security assumptions as one of the other ones, and so ideally we just have 2 highly different signature types, one that can be dependent, like either can be dependent on should another one break. Right now, post quantum cryptography is not super well how would I say, understood in the same way that elliptic curve cryptography is. Like that, we don't have computers that can run it, and so or break it at least. We have post quantum cryptography runs in classical computers, but we don't have a good way to be adversarial against it, other than just in theory. Like, mathematically we can say that these are safe, but then there's also like the potential for side channel attacks, just a lot of things that we haven't put enough thought into. So I'm not confident to commit enough in any single algorithm to commit to just one, but 2, having a fallback for every address will be really helpful, in addition to committing to an elliptic curve public key. So you have your choice basically with P2 quantum resistant hashes to if you want to spend with a traditional public key cryptography with elliptic curve cryptography, or you can spend with PQC. So you could spend with one is called MLDSA, and it's also known as crystals to lithium, and the other one is Sphinx or SLH-DSA, and so MLDSA is based on lattice cryptography, whereas Sphinx is based on hash-based cryptography. So they're fundamentally different protocols. Also, like with one of the major things that P2 quantum resistant hash does is it completely, so it's built on Taproot, but it completely deprecates the concept of what's called a key path spend. One thing your listeners might know about Taproot is that you have very sophisticated technically adept listeners. That's one thing I know about this Stefan Lefebvre podcast, is that you go deep on some things. One thing is they might know is that Taproot addresses are they are essentially a tweaked public key, and that tweak comes from so it's a public key that has an additional number added to it, added or multiplied. I'm not 100% sure. It might be even both, but it's either added or multiplied. But it essentially kind of like it's still on an elliptic curve. It's just they've added a number to it, and this number would be a hash that corresponds to the script path spends. And so there's a key path spend that's just a public key that will then be tweaked and that tweak comes from the script path spends, and the script path spends, you can have multiple script paths, and when you go to spend them, you have to provide the alternate tap branch hash. And so it's essentially, script path is a Merkleized, some call it an alternative script tree, some call it a abstract syntax tree, but it's basically a Merkleized binary tree of script path tap leaves that specify what's called tap script. And so, and that all goes into the witness, which is interesting because like you can commit to it in the output. You can commit to like a taproot witness program, which is essentially like also known as a script pub key. But it's very simple. It's just like the number 1 to indicate this is SegWit version 1, and then 32 bytes tweaked pub key. And whereas the and I hope I'm not going too far in the weeds on this. Hopefully you're tracking, but
Yeah.
awesome. Then let's see the.
To be honest, I'm sort of struggling, but let's go through it
Taproot
anyway.
is
So, I know enough to understand that,
yeah.
we've got a key path spend and there's a script path spend, and the basic idea, the short version of what I understand, you tell me what I'm getting wrong, but the short version is we might have to disable the key path spend, and we might have to only have script path spends to make this all quantum resistant. That's as much as I kind of get here.
That's a good takeaway. That is a really good summary of what I'm trying to explain. Yeah.
Okay, so take us through the idea then. So, just walking through the broad idea, is the idea then that BIP360 would be a soft fork introducing a new script type, quantum resistant hash, and
not a new script type, but a new output type.
Sorry, okay, gotcha. A new output type that, and people would have to spend out of their old things, out of their old whatever, outputs into the quantum resistant type. And in the new paradigm, that's where we'd be operating only on script path.
Correct.
Okay. And so I've heard various kind of different ideas. Maybe this is unrelated to your idea or it is related, but people have spoken about this idea of like, oh, could you have like wallets that kind of have both, right? They kind of have they're doing maybe my explanation here is going to be really bad, but the idea is that they've got both, but eventually they would once the quantum day happens, you would have to do another soft fork to sort of disable all the key path spends, and then from that point on it's only the quantum resistant script path spends.
Yeah, that gets into like a different proposal or different set of proposals.
Okay.
But yeah, because there's the proposals that are meant to give us a safe place to put our coins, and then there's the proposals of what to do with quantum vulnerable coins.
I see. Okay, gotcha. Okay, and so can you walk us through a little bit like what would be on the BIP360 plan? What's the idea? Is the idea that, we get enough support, enough people are kind of like, okay, yep, I agree with Hunter's plan. Let's do it. Let's do this soft fork, create this new output type, and people just move their stuff over. Is that the plan? Or can you tell us, like, can you walk us through what your intent is here?
Yeah, well, what's interesting about BIP360 is that it's gone through a ton of review. We have multiple drafts of inversions of it that we've been working through, and I even brought on a co-author, Ethan Hallman, who as his claim to fame is that he's also done at least one of the BIP, and he's also a PhD cryptographer who currently works for Cloudflare on their Post Quantum Cryptography team, and so he's a very capable and he contributes to the Bitcoin Devs mailing list all the time, but a very capable contributor, and I'm very happy to have him as my co-author, because he's like BIP360 before he came on versus BIP360 after he came on is a completely different thing, completely different beast. We've been putting in a ton of work over the past month or two since he's come on, and really helped us figure things out. And uh, there's just been a number of changes and developments, but everything that I've described about the Taproot stuff is the most up to date stuff now. So in earlier versions of BIP360, we used to have kind of like a different way to commit to the quantum resistant hash from public keys, and we also had introduced what's called a attestation, which was also known as a quantum witness, and or quitness. We couldn't really come up with a good name for it at the time, but we had to do away with that because Ethan engaged another guy. His name is Bas Westervan, and he is a post quantum cryptographer who understands PQC very well. And he wrote on the Bitcoin Devs mailing list a little, a good amount actually of research that he did into what we cheekily term JPEG resistance, but it's essentially like looking into how difficult or easy it is to add arbitrary data to signatures that are used by these algorithms. And it turns out that Sphinx only has 7/8, no, 1/8 quantum resistant or JPEG resistance. I misspoke. It's JPEG resistance that it doesn't have. So basically, you could put 7/8 of the signature as arbitrary data of your choosing, if you designed it, if you developed that correctly. And so as a result, it would be really foolish to increase or provide a increase in the witness discount, especially if that could affect mining incentives or various other things like the fee market, just like, and especially node runners, right? Like, because if we were to, for example, increase the witness by a 4x, which is something that I was considering before I did all the math behind it, it would essentially go from the worst case scenario, which is a 4 megger, to a worst case scenario that's a 16 megger. And it would go from worst case scenario of 200 gigabyte chain growth per year to worst case scenario 800 gigabyte chain growth per year. And so that is something that is just not really attractive to node runners. It's not a good selling point of PTQH. And so we always deliberately kept that discussion out of BIP360, but also after doing that research, it's become clear that that might not be the right way to scale post-quantum cryptography on Bitcoin. So so
what is the right way to scale?
Well, Ethan actually put together a proposal for scaling post-quantum cryptography on the Bitcoin Devs mailing list. I call it BitZip, but you can't find it under that name on the mailing list. It's just he just described it like basically as like how to scale PQC on Bitcoin and on the mailing list. And that was Ethan Hallman's proposal. And so he goes into essentially a block-wide minor coordinated transaction compression algorithm that could be implemented using Starks. And he does the math on how much more could we get from that. And it could result in at least 1 or 2 orders of magnitude like increase in transaction throughput, even with post-quantum cryptography, which is could be very exciting. And it's not like we're introducing Starks into Bitcoin as an opcode. It's more like a minor coordinated activity to compress transactions using Starks and still have them be verifiable on chain, and then miners will then commit to that, and of course, because they've compressed all these transactions, they can squeeze more fee revenue out of them, and so that way it's incentive compatible with miners.
The lead sponsor of this show is Bold, the best place to buy, sell, and save Bitcoin. For listeners in the US, Bold lets you secure your financial future with complete peace of mind by integrating a low-fee, Bitcoin-only brokerage with next-gen multi-sig vaults. With Bold, you can smash buy Bitcoin or set a DCA plan for only 0.99% fees and seamlessly deposit the Bitcoin direct to your Bold vault. The Bold Vault is a 2 of 3 collaborative multi-sig where you hold 2 keys and Bold holds 1 as a redundant backup, protecting against loss or theft. You can use Trezor, Ledger, or Cold Card hardware wallets to spin up a Bold Vault in just a few minutes, and the Bold Vault is the only collaborative custody vault available with 0 monthly fees. They're also offering 0 fees on your first $10,000 of Bitcoin buys and $25 of free Bitcoin when you buy $100 of Bitcoin or more. Try Bold today and upgrade your stacking experience over at getbold.io. And now, back to the show. So I guess let's bring it back to this particular idea, though, with quantum witness. As I'm understanding then, the point is these signature sizes are going to be larger than today's Schnorr or ECDSA signatures that we currently use in Bitcoin today. I think from your paper, it was like, off the top of my head, it was like 64 bytes or 70 bytes. That's like currently what we have today. But these are going to be, it could be like 20x bigger or even much bigger. Would another idea be to just accept less transaction capability per block in Bitcoin?
I mean, I think that's acceptable for now, just because fee rates are so low, and like we've actually seen periods recently where entire blocks go unfilled, and so like one thing people have put forward, some people have. One of my favorite Bitcoiners, Luke Dess Jr., he has advocated for like a block size decrease.
The famous 300 kilobytes, yeah.
Yeah. And I might just suggest that instead of decreasing the block size, we increase transaction size.
Well, yeah. I mean, with quantum resistant transactions, I guess, with these quantum resistant outputs, and yeah. So, can you give us an idea, like, what size increase are we talking? What do you think is likely? But I guess even here, it's a moving target, or there's moving parts here because there might be more optimizations or more other work. But just kind of as we stand today, what is it looking like?
Well, it's not great. It's about, so this is the main figures to pay attention to are the total of public key and signature pair bytes used, and you can compare this to, so in with traditional Taproot and Schnorr, you have a 32 byte X only SecP 256K1 public key and a 64 byte Schnorr signature. So you have essentially 96 bytes that correspond to elliptic curve cryptography. So let's just round that up to 100, because like there's also push bytes 32, there's push bytes 64.
Yeah,
so
right.
yeah,
Let's just call it 100.
Yeah. And then going to post quantum cryptography, it's more like 4,000 and 8,000 kilobytes, or megabytes, just bytes. So 4 and 8 kilobytes. Sorry. So it's about 40 to 80 times
40 to
more.
80x. Okay, gotcha.
But that's just the signatures. Whereas there's other parts, and the thing to know about these signatures is that they do receive a witness discount. So what you can do is you can divide that by 4, and you add it to the rest of the transaction cost, and you get more of a balanced equation there. So it sounds like a nightmare at first, like on the surface, but still, if we just make the signatures 10 times bigger, and then the rest of the transaction is accounted by the same, and by 10 times bigger I mean like 40 divided by 4, right? Which is the witness discount at present. Then you get like maybe 10 times more data in the witness per transaction, and then you have like the script hub key, which doesn't receive a discount, and various other transaction fields.
Okay.
Like
right. So, I mean, kind of loosely speaking, a 1/10 of the current block size.
Well, let's see. I mean, like, the thing is, the thing to like be aware of is that we don't fully use all the block size in the regular course of things, right? Because like usually we'll see maybe 1 or 2 megabytes used, but like that's because not all the transaction data goes in the witness. What this will do is it'll put more data in the witness, which receives a decent size
I see
discount.
what you're saying. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So it's because the signatures are bigger, there's going to be more in the witness, and it might make the blocks bigger on average, let's say. Fair assumption, I guess. Okay, yeah, I think I'm sort of loosely following you here. Okay. And
so
then
I wouldn't say like it's a wholesale 10x decrease in transaction throughput. It might be more like a 5x, maybe.
Gotcha.
Maybe closer to 5, just because like if we're going from like 1.5 to 2 megabytes to more like 3.5 megabytes per block, because we're using so much more of the witness, then that might be more the scenario that we'd expect. And of course, at 3.5 megabytes per block, that results in an average chain growth rate of about 175 gigabytes per year, as opposed to say 100, which is roughly where we're at now.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's not like end of the world, and I think most people today, I mean, theoretically in 2017 we agreed to max 4 megabytes theoretical limit. We, the community, node runners, whatever you want to call it, hodlers, whatever. So
that's been Bitcoin for the past 8 years. It's not.
So if you're okay with it since 2017, then theoretically, I don't know. Now, I mean, look, the question of block size is going to be a controversial one, no matter which way you slice it, because there'll be some people who think, no, you should, because there might be other people who say, no, you should increase it a little bit more to kind of compensate. And there might be others who, the Luke Dashers or others who would say, no, we want it smaller. So I guess you're never going to please everybody. But
like the problem with blocks is it's a bit of a tragedy of the commons, right? Like it's one of those things where like it is a one of the only cryptographically public resources out there, right? Where we're it's like it really is like one of those things where it's a unique thing in like the concept of peer-to-peer, and it's one of those things that and distributed systems in general, and as a result, it established a very unique social component, because in some ways it is a bit socialized. It is like the only socialized thing about Bitcoin, really, other than, say, the fact that we all agree that consensus is essentially like these are. It's like the Constitution, right? Like the Genesis block and the parameters that are encoded essentially are committed to in that. Since then, along with all the consensus rules since January 3rd, 2009, then that's essentially our contract, right, with Bitcoin. That is the it's like our constitution. It's very difficult to change for good reason, and it's gotten us pretty far so far, right? Like it's done pretty well so far. $2 trillion is a fantastic market cap for this asset. It's incredible how far we've come. and so I totally understand why people are reticent to change that, right? The thing is, we also don't know how much capital could be coming in if we like, because there are Bitcoin is considered quantum vulnerable. There are definitely like gold bugs who will like make that point, and that's and they do have like a salient point there, right? Like gold is not quantum vulnerable. It's vulnerable to debasement from the cosmos in like asteroid mining or whatever, but regardless, it's not quantum vulnerable. And so the thing is, we can upgrade Bitcoin. Like, I would like to think we can upgrade Bitcoin. Let me just say that.
Right. Yeah.
And hopefully we'll be able to do it in time before there's any major issue. We will be fully prepared to weather that storm, God willing, right? And so that's but and what's interesting is that we can fix Bitcoin, we can't fix gold, right? And so that's why I'm really bullish on Bitcoin. And
so let's talk a little bit about what it would. I mean, one other thing that I guess I'm thinking now, and maybe listeners are thinking, is what other things in our ecosystem would change? Like, would we need? I presume we would need new hardware wallets that can sign these special output types, and we would need like, all of our software would have to get updated.
Lightning nodes,
like
Electrum
there's a lot of these things that all these bits
wallets,
and pieces would have to get updated to
everything.
kind of be, quantum ready, let's say, like Y2K ready or whatever, right? But the problem here is we don't it's not like Y2K when we know, okay, it's happening on the year 2000. We don't know when it's coming.
Exactly. Yeah. It's sadly we don't have a date on it. And we also, there's so much to upgrade. Pretty much everything will need to be updated in response to this. I mean, first of all, soft forks, that's kind of the deal anyway, right? Like, I mean, either 95% of the network hash upgrades, or it kind of doesn't really work. And so there's definitely upgrades to be had on the miners, and of course economic nodes, Coinbase and Kraken and Binance. Imagine all of them. Like, remember how long it took for them to get native SegWit support even?
Right.
And
people were yelling at blockchain.info for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years when SegWit, right?
Yeah, yep. And then later on, there was a point where if you ever tried to send from a Taproot address to a Coinbase address, which would by then be native SegWit, if you tried to send those coins, they wouldn't show up. They wouldn't be like something somewhere. They just wouldn't show up in your account. And so you would actually need to reach out to Coinbase support and
get it manually credited somehow.
Right. It was a total mess. And so hopefully we've kind of gone through some of those teething pains, and we kind of have a as Bitcoin matures, hopefully those problems won't be as bad. And we can also do our best to, as developers, like myself, my team, the people around me, my community of quantum Bitcoiners, I guess you could say, we're all doing our best to make it so that this upgrade goes as painless as possible for other developers in the ecosystem, in the broader Bitcoin ecosystem, such as like Lightning nodes and Taproot assets and Frost multisig, Music 2, and even who knows, maybe even Roast, right? Like things that people are working on that just will need to be updated in order to support PTQRH. But the thing is that's really nice of PTQRH also is that it should be mostly Taproot compatible. I can't, it's difficult for me to imagine a scenario where it isn't Taproot compatible. So hopefully it'll just be instead of going to putting your tap tree in in a P2TR address, you put it to a P2QRH address, and that's it. That's all you need to do. But that's, of course, it's never that simple, because you of course need another derivation path, kind of like how we went from BIP84 to BIP86, which is essentially those BIP84 is for pay to witness public key hash to and then BIP86 is pay to taproot, and so, or P2TR, and those are derivation paths used by the wallets that will generate new address output types, essentially, for the wallet based on the different parameters. Sparrow users are pretty familiar with this. Also, like anybody using Miniscript, will know that you can put WPKH or WSH, and then you have like or TR parentheses,
Right,
and then
in the output descriptor section.
Yeah, exactly, and then or now eventually you'll be able to put QRH, and that will give you quantum resistant addresses.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I mean, there's so many things that are would have to get changed here. And what about, over the next 5 to 10 years? I'm sure there'll be advancements on the quantum cryptography side of things. So I mean, for now, you've got this. You said crystals, dilithium, and Sphinx. This plus 128S. Could those change as well in the next few years?
Well, yeah, I mean, like one
Because then
thing,
it becomes like a moving target of what are we upgrading to? Because
one thing we discovered recently, I think, let's see, I think it was Ben Sigmund. He recently came out with a
a quantum resistant version of Blue Wallet. I think he made a soft fork version of that. Something, not a soft fork, but he made his own like fork version.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he forked Blue Wallet and tried to do his best to add Post Quantum Cryptography to it. And in his experimentation, he discovered that on iOS, the SHA-2 variant of SLH-DSA or Sphinx ran way faster than the Shake or SHA-3 variant, and I think it might be because Shake is also, I think, distinct perhaps from SHA-3, and so it just didn't benefit from hardware acceleration in those libraries that like crypto libraries that iOS provides, and whereas SHA-2 wound up being accelerated by the CPU, and it just wound up being a better wallet experience. And then there's also the flip side, which is like, one thing, there was a paper that came out that said SHA-2 384 would not be quantum resistant. So like, there's a number of different like considerations in terms of picking exactly which variant of the algorithm we use, and but ultimately it may behoove us in terms of hardware compatibility to default to SHA-2 instead of Shake, and using the more modern algorithm that might be more quantum resistant.
Okay, yeah. So lots of different pieces there. We should also chat about the hourglass concept. As I understand, this is also a related idea. My I guess the high level layman's understanding I have, you correct me if I'm getting something wrong here. My understanding is to try to kind of deal with this incentive problem of a quantum attacker, the idea would be to have like a special self fork where there's only one, I guess, transaction in the block that can include the public key outputs, the quantum quantum vulnerable outputs, so that it's like a natural kind of rate limiter of those vulnerable coins. Can you just explain a bit more or elaborate there?
Yeah, so Hourglass v1 only really addressed the problem of P2PK coins. Sometimes they're also called Satoshi's coins.
Yeah.
There's also the thing that stipulates is that only one output can be included per block, and so anybody looking to spend those outputs at the time would need to do it one at a time, and also pay a competitive fee to miners. Now, in order to be prioritized for that one spot in that block that those outputs can go when they're spent. Now, there's the other problem with that is, so the solution. So the reason why it's an appealing solution is that 1.7 million coins spread out across 34,000 different addresses with an average balance of 50 Bitcoin each. Those could be liquidated within, like, 34,000 output spends could be liquidated certainly within a day, like even within hours maybe. And that amount of Bitcoin, like millions of coins just hitting the market within a day, could just be devastating to the price of Bitcoin. And although it's kind of like, it's not like, how would I say, in fashion for devs to talk about price, the thing that we need to acknowledge about Bitcoin is crypto economic security model is predicated on the value of Bitcoin. And so miners will there might be some capitulation in the hash rate, for example, if the price goes down too low. And so and that reduces the security of the system. And so it's just like something to be, I would say, aware of. And although it might not be like serious enough to present, say, 51% attack, that takes there's a lot that goes on in a 51% attack. It's very unrealistic in my opinion. It still would reduce the security of Bitcoin and how much value it can be secured. So, that said, 1.7 million coins hitting the market. Like, ideally, we would spread that out, and if we spread that out, then it becomes 34,000 outputs per block, and the thing, or not per block, but per one per block, and so we spend one of those per block. And so that's 34,000 blocks essentially of spends, and that corresponds to about 8 months of Bitcoin blocks, because there's about 52,000 blocks mined in a year. There's 1,000 blocks mined a week. 1,008 technically, because of the difficulty adjustment happens every 2 weeks, and that's 2016 blocks, right? So it's technically 1,008 or maybe some change. And there is of course a problem with that, which is it's not like, it doesn't address the problems of other quantum vulnerable coins, and also 8 months might not be enough. And so I came up with this potential solution called Hourglass V2 that I just want to kind of put out there and maybe get some feedback on. And I haven't really formalized it in any BIP form, so I haven't put it towards the devs mailing list, but I'm talking about it because, like, I think it's good to, like, field these ideas before really starting to dive into them and work on them. Is to instead make it so that basically there will be a date at which no new taproot and no new page public key and addresses can be created, and also addresses cannot be reused. And so like the network would reject somebody trying to spend coins to an address that already had its public key exposed. And so that would be one part of it. And then at a later date, those quantum vulnerable coins would then be subject to a rate limit of 1 Bitcoin per block. And if we do 1 Bitcoin per block, then instead of one 50 Bitcoin output per block, it would be 50, just like capped at an actual limit of actual coins.
Right. It's rate limited by the number of BTC, not the outputs.
Right. Then that would last Bitcoin 120 years, potentially. It would take like those 6.2 million Bitcoin that are quantum vulnerable. It would take 120 years to spend them all, and that's essentially what's, well, it sounds kind of draconian, but it's essentially what's needed in order to keep the economic node runners happy, because like they're, like the different exchanges, different ETF holders, things like that, they have a vested interest in keeping Bitcoin's price stable. And if there's one thing that could really destabilize the price, is that dramatic increase in supply that could be caused by quantum computers. So in a way, keeping your coins in quantum vulnerable addresses, even after something like P2 quantum resistant hash has been published and activated, then you're essentially putting the network in danger unnecessarily. We need to upgrade all these coins and migrate them and all that. And so, yeah, that's
Okay, gotcha.
That would be the
All right.
solution. Yeah.
Now, another thing people will be, if we're just kind of broadly talking about the transition or people trying to move coins, how long is that going to take realistically? Like, let's say people came to agreement on, okay, this is the path forward. I mean, is it going to be like a year or 2 years for everyone to, or at least most people, to move their stuff out of the vulnerable addresses into quantum resistant?
Yeah, there was a paper that was published that investigated that possibility, and their conclusion was something like a year, a best case scenario, probably more like 2 years, maybe even more, depending on the congestion. What's nice about P2 quantum resistant hash is that moving your coins to a quantum resistant hash address doesn't really cost much more at all. Like it's about the same as a Taproot spend, and so which are slightly pricier than
Gotcha. So then maybe it's not as much about the kind of on-chain cost, but it's more about the broader kind of getting a new kind of hardware wallet, or getting a new kind of way to secure your quantum resistant coins and all this sort of thing. Maybe it's more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And of course, can't let you go without getting your view on the whole burn versus stealing question. I suppose different arguments on both sides. On one side, people would say, well, if you burn them, is that confiscatory? On the other hand, if you, let's say, you let the coins be distributed, let the chips fall where they may, law of the jungle, let whoever gets the first quantum computer get those coins, that could also be a problem too. So where are you on that?
Well, I would say that good arguments are made on both sides. I think the people who are advocating for not necessarily burning or freezing those coins, the people who are arguing instead that we shouldn't reduce the supply cap of Bitcoin at a protocol level, I think those people make a good point. I also think that people like Jameson Lopp and like in Troy Cross also are they also have a point in that it might just be simpler just to burn them. But Hourglass is supposed to be a bit of a compromise, or at least a middle ground, and it doesn't reduce the supply cap, but it severely limits it. Severely limits the spend of those coins. So the problem with either burning or with Hourglass also is that timing is everything, and so we'll have to be really careful and communicate in advance, like what we intend to do if there is a big emergency scenario. And if we don't react quickly enough to that particular necessity for a rate limit or a burn, then a burn event, or just like an upgrade that freezes those coins, then we could see hard forks of Bitcoin. We could see like kind of like a corpo coin of Bitcoin that is backed by all the economic nodes, and then the miners have to make the hard choice of backing a hard fork, and then that puts all the chips on the table for whatever other upgrades these economic nodes might want to run. And that's like kind of a nightmare scenario. And so ideally we have a solution in place for handling the mass liquidation of those coins because of the interests of economic node runners and miners.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. It's complicated to really think about all these things.
There's game theory, there's like market dynamics. It's incredibly complex and difficult question.
Yeah. I guess we'll just sort of have to get feedback and see what people are thinking about and how they're thinking about it. So I guess from here, what are you looking for? Are you hoping for, people to help you on the project or give their feedback? Do you need support? What are you looking for?
Yeah, feedback and review is absolutely very useful. We have some, like right now there's like a GitHub pull request that Ethan's made into mine, where he's added all his thoughts and completely refactored the BIP, and we're pretty close to merging that. Depends on when this episode comes out, but it should be pretty close to being merged, and at which point it'll be published to bip360.org. So that's basically the place people should go to kind of as a touch point for learning more about the BIP, reading it, and of course there's a Substack link also there in which we will provide like email updates as things progress. That's
okay. Yeah, I think that's probably a good spot to finish there. Any closing thoughts, and where can people find you online?
Well, people can find me under CryptoQuick on X, and there's also an NPub there, and in case you're inclined to Noster. Really, I mean, there's just so many unknowns in this that I also just kind of turn to prayer, because it really is one of those things where like we kind of can't know, and it's one of those things that's that we kind of need to leave to a higher power in some ways. And also, but that said, it requires a lot of work on our own part to be prepared, and so we're doing our best to come up with a good solution, but hopefully that solution is timely, and hopefully it's received well by the community, and hopefully we're wise enough as a community to recognize a good solution and activate one when it's ready. But that's a huge unknown, right? Like, we haven't upgraded Bitcoin in 4 years, and so it's it really is like, people are right to be nervous, and hopefully I'll like just get enough support and just people who are interested, and in general just people like putting their good vibes out there towards this. That all of that's really helpful.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining and explaining your view and explaining some of these concepts for us. Certainly, I think there's just been a few new things I've learned, just from listening. So yeah, thank you for joining me, and listeners, check out the links in the show notes. Hunter, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.